This is the third day of the December 88 7-day retreat in Springwater. I've written many questions down, and there are more than we will get to today. One which was not just the concern of one person, it concerns all of us. Is when you talk about attention or awareness, it immediately becomes a standard for me, which I must live up to. Also from previous Zen conditioning, and maybe long before then, I have the standard of needing to do everything with excellence. And I find that these two standards collide with each other. That when there's the striving for excellence, there's no attention. Actually, two things in this, aren't there? When there is any standard and the striving for any standard, is there attention? Or let us say this spacious awareness which does not block out anything considered a distraction. We do here talk about something, and the mind which has been trained to make standards, goals, ideals, does so. The ideal becomes awareness, or for some people, complete awareness. I have to be completely aware all the time. Also because of previous training of doing everything superbly, excellently, better than everyone else. Can that movement of the mind in itself, as it happens, as one becomes aware of it, be looked at? One wouldn't report about this if one was not to some degree aware of it. Can one see that the idea or the ideal of constant awareness or perfect awareness is not awareness? It's an ideal, it's an idea, a movement of thought. A thought, when it crops up in the mind, exerts tensions throughout the body. I must attain that. An ideal functions like a magnet under a sheet of iron filings. Every filing becomes oriented toward where the magnet moves. So it is with our whole body. It moves toward, in its functioning, in its activity. Not taught, but it is affected by the idea of a goal. And it is as though it was moving toward that, even if one is sitting. One can experience that, it is palpable. Can that come into awareness? And not be taken for granted that this has to be so, because it always has been so. Because our life has been one of goal orientation and trying to achieve, either succeeding or failing, or something in between. Is it possible to hear about something and not make it into an ideal? Because the process has been seen, observed, and understood, and not entered into in that insight. That is the functioning of awareness. Not functioning as an ideal, but exposing what is happening in the mind as ideals are set up and striven toward. Engaging the whole organism in this striving, either for attention or for excellence or for fame or position, money, success. It's always the same movement of the ideal, the motive to get there, and the whole physical system under the influence and impact of this motive and goal. The complications, extra complications coming in if there are several ideal goals that one is trying to attain which collide with each other. I have to be excellent at work, but I also have to be attentive spiritually. And if I pay close attention to what I'm doing, maybe I'm not putting this same effort in to achieve, to do more, to be more excellent, to excel others. Can there be order in this confusion of the mind and body? Because any confusion in the mind is manifested throughout the body as tension, stress, discomfort, pressure on the chest, solar plexus, abdomen, back, shoulders, neck, head. So here one has a week of quietness and an abundance of sunshine. To sit and walk and listen to the movements of the mind and body. Not trying to attain something, but to look and see what is going on. In truth, there is nothing to attain. There's only to see what is. And not be deceived by it or deluded by it. Or overwhelmed by it. Of course, in all of this, there is the question of who is the striver, the attainer, the pusher, the doer, who has to get there, who has to be attentive. In a moment of open awareness, that doer is revealed as thought. Am I doing well now, thought will ask? Or, I am attentive now, aren't I, thought will ask? Or, I've blown it again, I was thinking, dreaming. Thought constantly re-establishes the feeling of me by thinking about myself as someone. Can that be caught as it happens? A moment of open listening, or feeling, hearing, seeing. And then the thought, am I doing all right? Do I have it? And with that, the separation from whatever was going on into thought about what went on. And a judgment, which is also produced by thought, it should have been differently. There shouldn't have been thinking. There should have been attention. I am a failure. I am no good at this. Not good enough. These are all habitual thought patterns, constantly reinforcing and strengthening the sense of a me. Can one look at that now and whenever it comes up? No one can do it for us, but it can happen in wondering about this whole feeling of separation and what one ought to do and the standards one ought to achieve and the stress that comes from not achieving them. The feeling of inflation if one tells oneself one is successful. Then there's a release of chemicals that make one feel good. Can one trace all of this? The thought and its instant connection with how one feels about oneself physically. The judgment is made that one is failing, not achieving the standard that is set by thought. Then there is a feeling of deflation, depression, despair even. Can one trace out despair when one verbalizes to oneself that one feels in despair? What is that feeling? How does it come about? What creates it? One may say, well, I just feel that way because my body feels so deflated or depressed, no energy or low energy. But what caused all of that? What brought it about? The thought may long have passed, but new thoughts come out of this state of being no good or not liking this state, wanting to do something that will energize one again, stimulate some energy. We will come back to some of this at some other time. And please bring it into meetings. This is the most crucial aspect of ourselves, the movement of thought about ourselves and each other. Creating something which may not be real. Separate entities. Separate bodies do exist, but the separate me it's universal in you and me and everyone else. The sense of me And how does it come about? How is it reinforced, strengthened, reaffirmed, or deflated, threatened? The whole idea, I must be attentive, I must be aware, or I must excel in my work, also has as one of its driving forces the sense of me, the identification with success, with being good, doing what the standards demand, feeling of worth and value if one attains to one's standards, and feeling worthless or of questionable worth if one does not attain. And with the feeling of worth or questionable worth go corresponding physical feelings. Because thought triggers energy throughout the body. Or deflation of energy. The drain of it, as we say, the leaking of it. And the beauty of this work is that each one of us can see this directly in this theater that we are. Sometimes I call it a laboratory. It's also a big or small stage on which all of this drama takes place. We talk to ourselves, we dialogue, we have all kinds of conversations with each other, or with imagined adversaries or people that we know but now imagine and talk to or against, who have hurt us, who have flattered us, who seem to be interested in us, or we are interested in them, and the show goes on all the time, and it can be perceived in quietly attending what is happening on this inner stage. And with that, to see what its ingredients are, what its substance is. Thought and its effect on the body through neurological, chemical, electrical, whatever reactions. I think in this connection fits what someone said. I feel angry at you because you don't give me what I want. You don't give answers or solutions to my problems. There's an anger welling up. No matter how independent we may feel or think we are, there is this yearning for someone to tell us what to do, to give us information about ourselves and advice on how to behave, how to get to places that we want to get, or even to tell us about good places to get and then give us the way and means to get there. I used to sing a German song, which is beautifully nostalgic, Schubert or Schumann, I don't remember, a very moving piece about show me the way back to children's land when I walked at the hand of my mother or father, I don't remember. Mother was the mother. Why, oh why did I leave that hand? And the bliss of that time. Not every one of us has had the bliss of a loving hand guiding us and holding us in childhood. And the security that was felt. Very few of us, all the people that one talks over many, many years, there's very little security in human beings that was felt in early childhood. And as one watches today, parents with children, both parents usually working, and then coming home and harassed by the children with all of their demands. And, of course, the standards imposed upon children of what is right, what should be done and not be done. And the rebelliousness of the children against that. There's very little quiet, spacious security in childhood these days. And maybe, I don't know if it ever has been, maybe among primitive people where there's a lot of time. What comes to mind right now is not a primitive tribal scene, but a chimpanzee holding the baby and letting it go and letting it come back, letting it go, and always being there for that infant chimp to make touch. It comes and makes touch and goes off again, comes back. It's all such slow motion, such it seems infinite security there for that infant to grow up. But if a mother were nowadays to sit home just for the child to make touch, every neighbor would say, "What are you doing with your time? What are you doing? Is that all you're doing?" There's a deep discontent among women with just being with their children. That's not enough. That's being tied down, and so forth. I don't want to go into it right now. But what it all came from is that there's very little security in us as we grow up, and therefore a constant yearning, conscious or unconscious or both, for that security of someone to take us by the hand, lead us, tell us what to do, tell us about us, what we are. Relieving us of the ardor or work of looking for ourselves. And yet through this yearning for someone, we are constantly misled. Misled, or at least we atrophy, something atrophies in us. Maybe it was never developed, so atrophy is not the right word. To find out for ourselves. All the little children do this. They examine everything, and they are very quickly interrupted, because what is examined is a precious hi-fi instrument or some a glass vase which is very valuable. The springs of the furniture are not to be used for jumping up and down on it, so one can't examine that either, the bouncing. There is, I think we all agree, there is in us innately a yearning to find out about ourselves and our environment. And so quickly are we either told, no, don't do that, maybe a hand is slapped, or in school we are guided very firmly along what is to be explored and how it is to be explored, and that there have to be problems solved, not problems understood and met, but solved. And the more problems that are solved on the page, the different the letter in red looks that is put on the page by the teacher. So this guidance in school and in church and in spiritual organizations is not just offered, it is wanted. It is a mutual system. The wanter of guidance and the giver of guidance create each other. Not just guidance, often control or submission and authority. It wouldn't exist if we weren't asking for it. So can one face this whole problem as the anger wells up? It's not a unique problem. People tell this to me often. All right, I just recently got a long letter from someone. They're putting down the battle with Toni about, on the one hand, rejecting her assumed authority, and on the other hand, angry with her not giving what one wants. The perfect authority, the perfect teacher. And the response is an old response, angry, a child if it doesn't get, he or she doesn't get what they want. It's angry, screams, stomps the feet. But one can look at all that and go beyond it. Not through repression or thinking I must control my anger, but seeing it arise, seeing what thoughts and feelings it comes out of. And the whole process open to view, and then moving on. Leaving it as a shell, a snake leaving a skin just moves on, shiny new, and the shell, the old skin is just lying there. Is that an ideal again? It's a metaphor, that's all. Also fitting in this connection maybe is a question which I was asked last night. You have made the assertion that we all have the same consciousness. All human beings share the same consciousness. What do you base this assertion on? Some people told me that just to hear a statement like that is some kind of a relief, that one is not alone as one thought one was with one's problems. Because in that there's enormous suffering for us human beings, thinking that only we have these problems and everyone else sails along happily and lightly. But it's not enough to hear somebody say it and believe in what this person says. One has to question it. And it's always appreciated when somebody says, what do you base such an assertion on? Could you be a little bit more explicit? Don't put one over on us. But if we're interested, it behooves all of us to look, not just again to take an answer. Why does one make such a statement that we share, or we all have the same consciousness? Meaning the same drives, desires, fears, functionings of thought, and the corresponding feelings in the body. Feelings of loneliness, insecurity, longing to be guided, longing to be loved and protected. And such difficulty to really love ourselves. I don't mean love ourselves, but love one another. What is it based on to say that this is shared by all of us, this whole series of problems? It comes from being with one another and talking to each other for years. And always, no matter whether man, woman, old or young, from Europe or America, or maybe from South America. I haven't been to the Far East, but a lot of stories come from there too. One can read and see the news. It's always the same thing. The media, in their own way, inform us of the same problems worldwide, globally, among human beings. Fear of one another, defense of oneself, and attack against the other. The wanting to have alliances, to feel stronger against the enemy also aligning himself or herself with others to feel stronger. The fear of one another and of oneself, it's there in all of us. One can see it when one rides on a bus. When one watches parents with children, little children and growing children, the painfulness of the socialization process, I think, is universal. Painful to the parent by having to face recalcitrant children who don't want to be socialized, they want to do what they want to do. And the pain of the child in being socialized. Yes, there are different forms of it, and the more rigid it is, and less flexibility, the easier it seems to go in more primitive tribes, but they are disappearing fast. Because now even the rainforests are being cut down and people will disappear who have still made a living in there. The very fact that we were all born after approximately 9 months of gestation from a womb, we've all gone through that birth channel. Maybe treated a little bit differently upon birth. Things seem to be a little bit more humane. Not that customary slap, but the mother getting the child to put the child on her belly. And yet, what a trauma it must be to come out of this warm, humid, constantly nourished environment to a cold, dry, much drier environment where one has to cry for one's food. And it may not come instantly. And there are repercussions if one cries too much, gets on one's parents' nerves. So this trauma we've all gone through, you could say, why do you call it a trauma? Well, I won't call it a trauma. That process. But one can feel and imagine oneself into it, what it must have been like. I always thought as a child, my parents are very open in telling us how we were born, how this all happened. And I always thought, why wasn't I aware when that happened? I would have liked to witness that slipping through that channel and coming out into the light of day. And I thought, well, maybe there's a slim chance I'm in a womb again, right now. And maybe there can be a slipping out of that again, and there can be awareness when that happens. Somehow or other I thought that had to do with the toilet, so I sat for long for long periods of time in that room. It had a little window and the sun came in. It was pleasant and there was small. A little wash basin and a mirror which I couldn't quite reach. So that is agreed that we've all gone through that. There's nothing to agree or disagree with. And living as a tiny being among giants, all of us have been through that phase of living as a tiny, helpless being for almost a whole year, pretty much prone in the presence of upright, huge, enormous beings with great power. Power to give or power to withhold. All of this has affected our memory, our thought processes, our feeling and imaginative processes. The whole legends of giants comes from that time, I'm sure. Benign giants and threatening, dangerous giants. And the shared ability of every human brain to think, to remember and fantasize and think about the remembrances and fantasies. One of the remembrances is that there is a me there, an entity which moves through time. And to think about that and to clothe it in all kinds of roles and garments. That is, we all do that. We all have done it and are doing it. Our myths are not so different from each other either. The myth of some superhuman beings directing our lives or having somehow to do with our lives in an omnipotent, omniscient way, which one propitiates these beings, or prays to them, wants to be pleasant in their sight, wants them to love one, or at least not punish one. It's universal. And we talked earlier about the yearning to find such a being, maybe not just in one's fantasy, but in flesh and blood, to attach to be safe. Of course, with the thought creation and image creation of a me through time, which we can remember ourselves through time. It's a collage of memories which makes up this feeling of me with its physical feelings. The body also remembers and experiences in connection with the images about ourselves. The attachment to that collage of images, which is me. That's universal. One can hate oneself, but that's a reverse attachment to a negative image about oneself. And it comes from the great capacity of the brain. It's what at least scientists point to as the cause for much more mental activity than is possible in most mammals. There are some who have the same brain capacity. But it needs a lot of brain cells and whatever other functions there to think about thought, to think about remembrance, to make something out of it, make a story or an assemblage out of it, and to project it into the future. We have that capacity, and therefore we are alike. I think it would be much harder to demonstrate why we are not alike, why we would not have the same basic consciousness. It seems so clear. Of course, we may not want to think about it in that way because we pride ourselves in our own capacities and talents, which we think are our own. Our knowledge, we talked about that yesterday. We have a tremendous attachment to our opinions and worldviews, political views. But where did we get all that from? What did we create ourselves? It all comes from somewhere else, doesn't it? Or it's some recombination of what we have inherited or what has been indoctrinated into us or passed on to us. This computer, which is the brain, able to recombine some of those things. But it's all universal heritage or social goods which have come to us through our parents, teachers, priests, ministers, and what we've read. So, what are we proud of, or what do we have this attachment to? Which on the one hand gives us good feelings of being of great worth or importance or significance, and on the other hand cause all of our sorrow and suffering and being stressed out over not being as good as others, not coming up to standards, failing, not being liked by others, being hurt by others who don't flatter us but insult us or criticize us. All that has to do with this image of oneself. It's the image that gets inflated or hurt. Don't believe me, watch it as it happens for yourself. It's so important to watch that as it happens. A tremendous clinging to the idea of myself and how I appear to others. Therefore, great dependency on others to appreciate me, like me, approve of me, admire me. And it's a very tenuous dependency relationship, because the other person may turn towards someone else and like that person better, or stop liking me for whatever reason. And then where am I? When my existence, my image depends on being fed by the admiration or approval of others. And that holds true for all of us, doesn't it? In the positive sense or negative sense. Because it does hold true for all of us. It is the beauty of being able to look at oneself and look at everyone at the same time. Because the understanding that comes out of insight into oneself is compassion for everyone else. Not animosity or hostility, but yeah, I know exactly how you feel. just one more question or statement by someone which also fits into this whole mosaic. Someone saying, I'm really afraid of completely being with something because I'm afraid I'll get lost. In different ways or different ways it's expressed by many people, saying when there's a moment when there's just going on what's going on, the sound, the pain, the sight, whatever, or nothing, then there comes the fear, a tremendous fear. And in asking, well, what is the fear about? What emerges is that I may disappear. Or I have disappeared for a moment. Horrors. I may get lost. And when this comes up, that is the soil out of which comes the question, what is that I or that me that is afraid of getting lost? Or what was lost at that moment? Let's inquire at that moment, not just go with the thoughts and fantasies and then clutch something to hold on to, but instantly ask, what is it that gets lost? Is it the very thing we were talking about before? This thinking about oneself as someone. That was quiet for a moment in the listening. In the listening, there was no thought of me listening. And therefore listening. Open listening, nothing barricading the listening, nothing fragmenting it. And then the fear. A thought already slipped through the mind, or else there wouldn't be the fear. But there was no awareness of the thought. Maybe there was. So what does the thought say? What has it said? What has it asserted? You may get lost. You may disappear. Beware, this is a dangerous road you're treading. Do you see how it's all thought? Whether I'm there or not there, that I am there. The sitting needs no thought. It's happening. There's sitting. Heart is beating. There's breath. The arms are moving. Sensations throughout the body of circulating blood or energy, whatever. But there needs to be no thought. This is me. And an attachment to that thought. All of that, when we're asleep, functions beautifully without that thought. The heart keeps beating and the breath keeps coming and going. Blood circulates without any thought of me appearing or disappearing. It just works. Why? Goodness knows why. It's marvelous. Just to listen to the heart for a while and wonder what is doing it. And come up with no answer, just the wonder of it. And then there needs to be no fear about not being there. But what's there or not there, which causes either pseudo-security or terror, is thought about me. This is not a preaching or a teaching. It's something to look at and test for oneself, to see for oneself. And the freedom that comes from such insight. To listen without the thought of me is nothing dangerous about it. They're just conditioned responses of memory and thought and the body. That's all it is. Of course, once the body has been aroused to manifest fear symptoms, because of a thought, you may disappear, you may be gone. The body now is all manifesting what we call fear. The thought has escaped one or it's gone, but the body manifests all these symptoms. Now, that's the signal that there's something dangerous around, just because the body feels this way. But if one sees the connection, then one isn't fooled. If the connection is not seen, the body signals danger. And the brain starts scanning for possible dangers of whatever. Thinking more. And then the body responding to more thinking about how dangerous things are. Does this make sense? See, this is not a matter of knowledge that came up yesterday. One person knowing something and everybody else not knowing something. This is not an appropriate description. It's not knowledge. It's a matter of seeing from moment to moment, which is possible for all of us. This has nothing to do with privilege or education or position or background. As a matter of fact, if it's just knowledge, doesn't amount to much at all, because it has to be seen freshly. A fearful thought arising and triggering fear in the body. And then the body signaling as though there was real danger. That can be seen as it happens, freshly each time. No need to think, I should have remembered that from last time. It's a useless thought. Because it's not a matter of memory, it's a matter of seeing now. Not based on memory, but on what is actually taking place this instant. we will end here for today.